Everybody ready to clap in a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1.
No. All right, clap in.
What?
In 3,
I counted
2,
down at the good hand.
1.
Hello, and welcome to Isn't Obvious, where I will be your host today as Micah, the persona I will be fulfilling. And there is an entity of Phil and an entity of Sera that may or not be presenting as they normally do.
I just realized in the last podcast I didn't do the presentations of the names of us.
Well, yeah,
Okay, sometimes we do.
Our cold open was real good. It would have been great as an introduction. That is just going to fall to the annals of edited digital media.
Maybe. It might be in there. You never know.
We've never had a cold open ever in any of the podcasts. So
Had a few chit chats. I don't. All right, whatever. Anyway.
Isn't it obvious that we should have a strata of unwritten rules that are written down? And it's based on like regional domains. So like a city can have a bunch of unwritten rules that are written down. Then that will expand to a county. That'll expand to a state. That'll expand to a country. Blah blah blah. And I'm bringing this up because there are unwritten rules of baseball, and there's myriad of them. You don't walk on the pitcher's mound. You don't get in the way of infielders fielding the ball. Like you don't act as an obstruction. Except for a lot of people do at second, and nobody seems to complain about that. So maybe it's just from home to first. Anyway, if one of the most important ones is if your team is up by a bunch, if it's a squash match, you're up by 10 runs, you do not swing at a meat pitch. You let it go as a strike. Because the game has to end at some point, and you piling on more runs is bad. There was an example of this a few years ago with Fernando Tatis Jr., who hit a home run in the first inning. And his team was up by like 12-2 or something. With bases loaded in the 7th, he hit a grand slam on a meat pitch from a pitcher who was not out there to strike him out. He was just getting out there to end the inning. And if you hit the ball and it stays inside the park, that's okay. Because, you hit the ball, but you shouldn't go for a home run. And he was admonished up and down baseball for this. He was a young kid. He was 22 at the time. I think he's now 23, so he's still very young.
Did he not know the unwritten rule? Is that why?
I don't know. I'm guessing he knew it, because if you play baseball, you know the unwritten rule. Like, there's no forfeit.
Yeah, but maybe it's not in his personality to...
Potentially. That makes it a competitive game. But, recently, there was a Twins game...
Yeah, but is it really a competition, though?
The comparison is, there was a Twins game recently against the White Sox, where the Twins were down 15-4 in the top of the 9th. The game is 6 outs from being over, and everybody can go on with their day. The White Sox will have their win, and it'll be fine. The Twins, in order to save the pitching arms of their relievers, put in their backup catcher to pitch. He throws a whopping 47 miles an hour. It's meant to go in there. It's a weird loopy thing. He's basically throwing knuckleballs, and just, you get out of the inning, it'll be the end of the game, it's fine. He ended up with a 3-0 pitch count against this guy who's on like a 1-year contract. And this dude jacked a home run on a looping ball that I could have hit, and I am inept at all sports. And the Twins broadcast announcers got more flack for this guy hitting a home run off of a meat pitch from a backup catcher throwing the ball than the batter did. And, they're ignoring an unwritten rule because the Twins suck. So it was fine to beat up on them because, they were going to lose anyway. But you have Fernando Tatis, who, as a rising star, needs to be better. So it's these unwritten rules are qualitative based on the importance of the player, I guess. But it's then why the hell is it an unwritten rule if it doesn't apply? Is it that subjective? Then why is it an unwritten rule?
That's why unwritten rules are stupid.
But that's why they should be written down.
Is what you're saying.
No.
Isn't it obvious? They should be fucking written down as a rule instead of just unwritten.
An unwritten rule that is written down is something that anyone can write down, and then it's upvoted and downvoted. It's like Reddit. Imagine Reddit unwritten rules.
But that's just like laws.
No. It's not legally binding, but it is grounds for admonition.
It should be part of the game then, in my opinion.
Well,
but it's respect for the game. It
should be written into the rules. If that's an unwritten rule, it should be fucking written in then.
I'm not.
Or we don't play that way.
I'm not. I mean,
Or don't get fucking upset and butthurt when someone decides
But
not to abide
no
by
one
the
complained
unwritten rule.
when the Braves scored 29 runs in a game. They, I think, tied the record for highest runs scored by a team, and like that was like a positive. But I don't know if anybody jacked a home run in like the late innings off of a non-relief pitcher.
yeah, I'm actually really in favor for unwritten rules to be like followed because I remember there was this golf game where Phil Mickelson, I don't exactly remember the details, but what he did was very unsportsmanship like.
Do you like pick up his
Like the
ball
whole
instead of tapping it in, kind of thing, or
no, I mean like you're supposed to mark the ball, but then like if it, I I don't remember the case exactly, but my dad was explaining it to me, so it's kind of hard to understand in Korean. But like the ball landed like on an edge or something, and it could fall
Mhm.
down, right? And it could roll to a worse lie. But you could also, when it lands and it's right about to teeter, like it's still kind of stationary, so you could just mark the ball,
so he marked
and
it
that's what he
quick
did.
before there was an
He
actual
marked it
lie.
quick before there was an actual
Sure.
movement, and you could do this, but like the point of the game is not to, do this type of fuckery, right? Like you're supposed to play this game. There's
With
a
some skill.
with some skill. There's like this idea that you're supposed to be honest with yourself, right? Like for amateur golf, especially, no, there's not going to be some PGA uh, sports announcer just watching your every move. And so you're supposed to have integrity in this game at an amateur level, right? But these professionals did
Mhm.
not. And so he got admonished pretty greatly about that. And again, I don't remember the exact details, so but the idea was that he broke an unwritten rule. And I think in the concept of uh, like gaming and metagaming, like there's there are perhaps unwritten rules, but people are always trying to exploit what the rules are to their game at maximum, right? But like for sportsmanship and real life gaming, I think there is a level of like respect for the game itself. Like in cricket, this is a big thing. Like um you want to respect the game because of the spirit of it, not just the rules. Otherwise, it's kind of like what
What's
are
the
they,
point?
robots, right? Like what's the point here? I mean, there obviously has to be some love of this game, and if you don't love it and you just do it because it's a check, then I think that's a sad. I think that the game itself is in decline. Like, what is your feeder system? Well, do you really like basketball? No, but that's where you make a lot of money, so that's what I'm gonna do. I mean,
Well,
that's kind of a strange
that was one
system,
argument I
right?
heard
So,
about the dude who teed off on the Twins pitcher was he's on a 1-year contract that's going to arbitration, and his argument for better pay is going to be based on his numbers, and that home run can make him another $100,000 in his contract negotiation. That was somebody. That was a
Which,
pass that
fair
happened
enough.
when Fernando Tatis then signed a $500 million contract.
right, and the other thing too is that for people who don't know anything about the Twins game, like Unwritten Rules, and I hear this latest score, it's like, oh, it's a big whopper, right? And I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm a fair weather fan, so I'm not gonna really care about them unless they're doing well. In fact, I'm gonna have a negative feeling about them now because they stunk it up so bad. But they really didn't.
Oh
I
no,
mean, they
they
did, but
absolutely
not to
did.
that level.
They
They
totally
absolutely
did.
did. But
It
they've
was
not been
15 to
doing
4 in the
too
ninth,
hot this
and I'm
season.
calling out the home run that made it 16 to 4 as a final score. So, grand scheme of things, not that
but
big of a
it,
deal. But this is the unwritten rule then. Now it's the
yeah,
respect of the game.
yes, and so I think it has like a conflict of interest, right? Like, do you respect a person because they want to do what they
Yeah, are you? It's the game or the
Well, he
player,
also
right?
could have tried to hit a
right?
single, but he didn't. He uppercut that. He was going for the upper deck. Like, he
Yeah,
made a point to get a
yeah,
home
because
run because he knew it was going
which
to be a lobber.
which I'm kind of on the fence about because I understand, you want to do what's in your best interest, and as a kid who wants to make this his
I mean, he's at
career,
the professional level. He's done that.
absolutely go for the. I know, but continue and like your prospects are just gonna get better if your numbers
Potentially.
are good, right?
Yeah.
Like you get to a better team, you get better pay, right? You can still move up. Um, and so like I understand that doing what's best for you as a person, but I also kind of am like, yeah, but what's the isn't the game important
But
too? Isn't the
The
team
crux of this
important?
is he should still be shamed for that, and I feel that he wasn't as shamed as much as the other example of this unwritten rule being broken. So then thinking,
Well, it's not
no,
a
it's an
rule
unwritten
though.
rule. It's out of the respect for
I
the
know,
game.
but
It's
it's
the
not a
spirit
rule.
of the
So
game that's being violated.
I
One was
can't.
punished by
Yeah, but I
like
can't.
people shaming, and the other one is not.
Yeah,
and that's
but
my issue. That unwritten rule is not being applied equally. Yeah,
equally.
Yeah.
Well, then it should be a fucking rule.
but it's not. Like you can
Or
try and hit a lob
something-
ball. That's not bad. Like you shouldn't just go for a home run.
Well, then don't fucking
But you
shame
should shame them
the
because it's
person
going
for
against
not
the
breaking
spirit.
any rules.
But that's why these unwritten rules should be written down, but they're not legally binding. They are grounds for shame to be given. And you can have those be regionally given. Like you have a geolocation.
Or maybe they're demerits. You get demerits or something.
I just
or
think
like
shame.
marks on
Like,
your
oh,
record,
they broke
like,
the unwritten rule. For shame. Just that.
I would say that these are like unsportsmanlike, right?
So you should get like there should be like a point system then of
So-
unsportsmanlike.
His stats
Picks,
come up and
right?
it's just like a frowny face next to
His stats are
sportsmanship.
great. Yeah,
No,
his
but
stats are great. He's a great individual player, but as
a representation of
spirit of the
baseball, he's
game,
very bad.
of who he, yeah, he's got a frowny face.
Right.
There's 3 times.
He's batting
there's 3
340. He's
instances
got
in the
40
last
home
year where
runs with 2 months
he
left.
decided
but he's not a
to-
good sportsman.
he decided not to be a sportsman.
But how does that extrapolate
player. He decided to
into
be a me player?
daily life? Like one of unwritten rules
For-
was you shouldn't talk about money, politics, or religion.
oh shit.
Right,
we're
but like
fucked.
that was an unwritten rule. That's like you shouldn't do that.
I think you should though.
I
I
do
think you
too,
should.
but I remember my parents.
Except for not money, politics,
Oh, yeah.
or religion. Don't
But
talk
it
about
depends.
those
It
ones. But
depends on
everything
your
else
audience.
is fine.
I think it really depends on your audience. Like you can talk about money, politics, and all that with your friends, but
No, I do with
don't think-
everyone. We should talk about
Maybe
those
with your-
things. They are important and they are deserved of discussion.
Micah, you are
But-
getting dangerous. Sorry, Sarah. You're getting dangerously close to a sore topic for me, which is
Money, politics, and religion.
yeah, all 3 of those.
Yeah, well, and then with people you love,
hmm
who disagree with you or have a completely
I don't know. I just mean
Different
strangers. I just go to people like,
way
I'm
of-
an atheist. Fight against me.
well, and it's like I don't mind having these discussions with strangers or friends because I feel like there's we have similar ideas and similar ways of thinking. So it's a little bit of an echo chamber. Not
Mhm.
always, but it can be. But with like my parents in religion, or well, I should say with my mother in religion,
Hey, Mom.
that can be kind of I just sort of avoid it out of respect for her mostly, unless she brings it up and wants to talk about it, and then I'm fine with it. But like, and we can have that discussion without jumping down each other's throats. But there's other people in my family who I'd rather just not have that discussion because it becomes too divisive and there's no purpose to it. Because neither of us will change our mind. So there's no point. And we just get angry. And that's not really productive.
Would you talk about the other 2 though? Money or politics?
I could talk about money with this person that I'm thinking of.
Sure.
And I could talk about religion with this person. Politics, I have talked about politics with this person, and I have been able to do it, but I wouldn't choose to talk about politics
But
with
was
this
your
person
goal
again.
to convince or just exchange ideas?
It was to exchange ideas.
Really? Even
I-
then?
At that point in time, yes. I did, put my points of like my perspective out there, but it wasn't to change their mind, and I don't think they were trying to change my mind either. Except like they would give me examples of why they think the way they do, and I would counter them with, yes, well, but here's this reason why that is a thing. So we would have discourse, and we could do it respectfully, but I don't think I could have a actual productive conversation with this person because they are not open to having their mind changed. They're not open to respecting what I guess is reality.
Reality is
If that makes
perception.
sense.
That's individualized.
Sensory experiences.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. But like, it's really difficult to like. I feel like I can talk to you guys, and we have discourses, and we have discussions where we might disagree on something, and we can respect that
Bodily
generally.
autonomy, post-mortem.
Echo chamber.
Probably. I mean, well, but we can agree to disagree, and we don't like lose sleep over it, and we don't
I haven't slept in 6 weeks
hate
since
each
our
other
last
at the end of the
conversation,
day.
Sarah.
Well, that sounds like a you problem.
Also, I found these
screw
great
you,
diet
man.
pills that apparently 99% caffeine.
Don't do that. That sounds really bad
My
for
heart's
you.
fine.
Don't
I've
do
been
that.
hearing it beat all day.
Have you ever been able to like see your heartbeat through your
Have
shirt?
you been able to see the room pulsing with your eyeball?
I haven't blinked in 3 hours.
But I still feel like there is an opportunity where I could talk to you and state my ideas with you too, right? And there is a chance that you could be like, okay, I see what you're saying. Even if we vehemently disagree on something, later on you still might say like, okay, I get your point there, or I see what you're trying to say. Whereas,
But even with those topics, they're supercharged, right? Like,
mhm,
I'm not comfortable
they can
talking
be.
about things like money, politics, and religion because they're either you're in an echo chamber, so you kind of know like you're among friendlies.
Hmm.
But okay, so if you're talking to somebody that has a differing opinion, like those conversations go south so quickly,
They can.
and they're really uncomfortable, and they make some arguments that I feel like I guess I'm gonna put myself out on a limb here, but like the money one is extremely uncomfortable for me to
And,
talk about.
so,
And I usually don't talk about that very often, other than like I wish I had more money. And capitalism is kind of like super destructive for lots of different forces. But hey, look at my phone; it's only $1,000, right? Like I make these type of comments, but I don't enjoy talking about it. Other than a system level, I can talk about it then. But at a personal level, it's just very like icky.
in,
Mhm.
And I think that's the same way
but
for others. Go ahead, Micah.
what is icky? Is it the comparison of salary versus like perceived effort to gain salary? Is it debts? Is it like how capital? Like what about it is icky that makes it so uncomfortable to discuss? I mean, I'm poor,
I
so
remember talking with an
money's
old.
easy for me to talk about.
Well, I remember talking with a old coworker. I mean, we were both coworkers at this time, about 7 years ago, and he made a comment like, "Oh, Phil, he's just a soulless person. He doesn't spend any of his money." And I was like, "Excuse me? Like, what do you mean by this?" He's like, "Oh, well, you don't you don't like to spend money. You don't like to have fun." Because we would go to like happy hours, and I would only order like a beer, and I would complain like, "Man, this beer is like $10. It's ridiculous, right?" And then he's like, "Oh man, live a little, right?
Yes,
Like,
Miller, $10.
you're just so tight with
That's
your
living.
right." I'm like, and later on, I discover that he's the same rank as I was at that time. We were like level one engineers or whatever, and I think he was getting paid about the same. But I never asked him like, "Hey, how much is your salary and stuff?" Even though it's in our best benefit to do so, right? But
Mhm.
again, it's so awkward and icky for me that I'm like, look, if you get paid more, that's because you are providing more output, and good for
Not
you,
true.
right?
Not true.
Like,
I had a very uncomfortable experience with dis inequality in pay
yeah.
for about a year
But it's
where
clearly
we
it
worked.
wasn't true. Like later on, I talked to my boss about it. And he's like, "Oh well, actually, he's just a slacker." And I was like, "But I'm working my ass off, and I'm getting paid less than him." And then that
Yeah,
should have been a light bulb to be like, we should talk about our pay. But it's in my best interest to do so, and same with him. But we don't because it's uncomfortable. So and then later on, I discover that like the way that he has his finances is very razor thin. Like he kind of he min maxes it, which is fine. But
that sounds horrifying.
to me, it's like, look,
I'd have
this
so
gives me
much
anxiety
anxiety.
thinking about. So he
Yeah.
would buy brand new cars, and he would just do. He was about the same age as I was, right? Maybe like a year older, and you'd be like okay with this. But then he would make mention like, oh, payday can't come soon enough. And I'm like, yes, that's true. Payday can never come soon enough. It should be every day. But yet we live in a society And he's like, oh,
Breaks us into weeks.
right. But then he's like, oh, well, like, you know. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you get paid more than I do, right? Your wife also, you know, at that time, his wife was a teacher. So, like, it's like you guys make good money, right? So it's like,
in theory.
But then, like, it later on, I discovered that he had type 1 diabetes, and our insurance was shit. So he was paying a lot out of pocket. So it's like, I hate this game of money, right? Because now I was like judging him, but then I didn't realize the full picture.
But he also
why.
presented
But then
himself
it's like,
a lot
well,
of superfluous purchases. That if he was
right,
a bit more austere, that medical bill won't be as impactful if he wasn't buying a new car every 2 years or whatever, or leasing whatever he was doing.
right.
Whatever. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, but there's a balance between living like a monk or a stalwart disciplinarian, which I think I agree with his comment, like, do live a little bit, right? Like, it's the same.
It's okay to spend money sometimes.
Right, like, don't feel like you should be some Catholic guilt on spending money.
You can have a fucking hobby.
Right.
One that costs you money, it's fine.
And then the other side, it's like, I thought he was superfluous with his money, but it ends up like, yeah, maybe so, but like a lot of his debt was because of medical bills. I laugh because
maybe
it's
it wasn't entirely on his spending.
So now to get to my real topic, where the American financial system has failed us.
Wait, what was the original topic?
Sera, pop quiz. What was the original topic?
Unwritten rules.
Unwritten rules. Thank you, Phil. You're so good.
An unwritten rule. If somebody has a pop quiz, you don't fucking help them out.
Unspoken rules.
The hilarious part was unwritten rules that will be written down is what I wrote in my notes here.
Yeah, no, but that's what I want. But I want that to be like a Reddit upvote thing. Like, you know, somebody can say, you shouldn't talk about religion in, like, non-well-known company. And then that can be upvoted a bit. And then the more it gets upvoted...
Unless your intent is to be an asshole.
The more... Right, but then the more people can be like,
that's an asshole thing to do. Maybe you shouldn't do it.
But yeah, they can call them out. Did you not see the last, like, unwritten rules board? Like, don't talk about religion was number 2, you asshole. Don't talk about religion.
I think you just sort of learn by trial and error.
No, but it's something that always fluctuates.
That's what I mean, is you learn by trial and error. Sometimes it's fine to do that, and sometimes it's not, and you just get... You discover as you make those mistakes.
But then that's not establishing a standard if it ends up being in so many subjective situations. I'm wanting a standard for this. I want Fernando Tatis and the dude from the White Sox to get the same amount of shame for clubbing a home run when they're up by 10 runs anyway with 4 innings left in the game. I want that same thing to happen to everyone else, and not just to millionaires.
Yeah, I agree. Shame should be used for maximum effort.
That's societal correction is shame. Like, cancel culture is just people did a shitty thing, and that shitty thing has come to light, and we need to shame them for it.
I wish guilt and shame worked on everyone.
It does to a certain point.
To people who care.
And eventually, shame can affect a bottom line. I don't know if Hobby Lobby lost a lot of business because of their anti-gay rights perspective, but they lost something.
I'm just thinking about the shameless people who don't give a fuck about anyone else. And
yes, and those are sociopaths, and they shouldn't be allowed in society anyway.
Or at least they have to pretend that they have to play.
Exactly.
Right. If they're being observed.
I do so much not to be a sociopath that my efforts should not go on.
I have an Apple Watch that tells me that anytime I'm a sociopath, it says, hey,
stop doing that.
Good job.
I'm quite certain that alarm never has gone off for anyone who owns an Apple Watch. It's on there. It's a feature. It just never goes off.
It's broken. Anyone who owns a fucking Apple Watch is probably...
Hey Siri, can you remind me when I'm being a sociopath? Well, remind you when you're being a sociopath. Never goes off.
Actually, joke's on you. It's always going off. It's just an alarm that's constantly going off in the background. You just don't hear it.
It's called having an Apple Watch on your wrist.
Exactly.
If this
I'm sorry, that's not sociopath. That's narcissism. But whatever, either way.
There's very little difference.
There is a difference, but not much. You're right.
I do agree, Micah, that the status of shame is so quick these days. And I think in our ye old days, society didn't seem to move as fast. But now it seems like with cancel culture, there's always the next thing that is hot, and the thing that was hot 2 days ago is old news.
True. I feel you had that in the before time pre-internet, but it was a more localized thing because you didn't have the world to talk to. You
It's
had to
word of
talk to the
mouth
people
only.
around you.
Your
Yeah,
voice
and you
did
learned a
not
lot more of those
carry.
unwritten rules. And if somebody
Yep.
became a pariah, they would move because
Yep.
they were a social outcast. But now there's no social outcast because wherever the fuck you live, you can find a community online, and that can give you the same comfort whilst your
and
job provides
the
you
same
with
goes
your
to the
lifestyle.
opposite of that. You can't really just move to escape that.
Right.
So
you can always
can't
find
even,
your parlor. You can find
your parlor, but you also
8chan
can't
and 4chan.
escape, unless you completely leave.
Yeah, and then on January 6th happens. And then we never
By
talk
that I
about
mean
it
leave.
again.
Yeah.
Like leave social media in that case, or leave the
I
internet.
like how we say
Go off the grid, become a
there
weirdo.
are
Sorry, Phil.
there are dates that we should never forget, and then there are dates that we absolutely should forget, according to the vote downvote system of dates that we should not talk about anymore.
No.
And January 6th is apparently one of those things.
No,
Only
we need
for
to talk
one
about that.
half of the country.
We need to talk about that for the rest of this country's history, however long or short that may be.
Yep.
That date is so historically relevant that it's mind-boggling how so many people are like, it was a thing that happened.
I mean, it was, but it's not just a thing that happened. It's something that was horrible.
No, but it's that, it was, whatever. Sure. I mean, it was a Wednesday.
It was a Wednesday. It didn't affect me personally. And you're like, but it could have. Absolutely could have affected you personally. What the fuck?
God,
what the fuck?
I was home from work early that day, and I was listening to C-SPAN that morning, so I'm like, some shit's gonna go down. And nothing was going down, because from, my drive home to getting high and relaxing was when the shit started going down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm gonna turn on the news and see what's... Why is there this interior photo of the rotunda at the... Wait, are they allowing tours? Why are a bunch of people... Is that a Confederate flag? What the fuck is going on? And it's drug-addled brain was like, 2 + 2 is 4.3678. We're real close to what's important. You're real close to getting what you need to understand. And then when it clicked into place, it's like, I know the Fibonacci sequence. This is fucked up.
I just like how they had this... I made a mention in the previous podcast where when I see Trump supporters waving the Confederate flag and they have their guns outside. I'm totally wrong on this in that earlier episode, but I said, look, I always consider them to be kind of very mundane, right? They're just kind of peacocking or whatever. But after January 6th, I'm like, wow, they were not cosplaying after all.
No, they were serious. They were luckily stupid and not a little more organized.
Any bit the one interview, it was an Axios or some guerrilla journalist came across this woman and her boyfriend walking away and we were patriots. We were here to do what Donald Trump told us to do, and they maced us. And it was like, you should have been shot for treason.
Yeah.
You were maced. That is... I
mean, mace is unpleasant, but it's...
Yeah.
survivable.
You received the same amount of government punishment than some people walking away from almost being hit by a semi protesting in Minneapolis last summer by just some National Guardsman in a truck. The murder, the state murder of...
A murder
not
by
an innocent man, but still a murder of a man.
Doesn't even matter. It was a murder in broad fucking daylight. It was a murder in broad fucking daylight by someone who was paid by the state.
Yes, there was
that
no judging
was
by peers. That was an execution by the state.
And that is fucking bullshit. And that is a legitimate protest. To get maced for that... Sorry, to get maced for that is just...
Here's the problem with the unwritten rules upvote downvote system, though, right? Because we're thinking about maybe people that are gonna say, look, maybe tipping should be always at 20%, right? Let's upvote downvote that at restaurants. That should be the baseline. Okay, all right, we'll talk about it.
10%.
But
10% is the minimum.
But we're including people now that the people that supported the January 6th type of, I guess you could say...
It's still nationally a minority. You still have the numbers of rational people, hopefully, If not, then you can reassess.
I honestly don't know. Like, I don't have any polling data from 538 to think about, but the fact that we have so many supporters even now for the GOP that are blocking any type of like idea of having a
But they're
commission.
not making an unwritten rule. They are making a written rule. Like, they are making a law because of that. It's not as serious as, like, I thought this was going to be a lighter topic, and it went real serious, because this was predicated on baseball, and baseball's unwritten rule. But, like, the upvote, downvote is still a mass consensus of a region, because you will always have those unwritten rules by region. And maybe extrapolating it to a state level made it more political, and maybe it shouldn't even be to that extent. Like, maybe every 50,000
I
people
mean, I could
range.
see it happening per like county level. So maybe the county that has Duluth.
Yeah, but then if you had that, Donald
they
Trump
could
won
have
the
their
2020 election.
well,
Because, like, it's the same counties voted for
yeah,
him.
this is where I get it's kind of nuts because like the idea of upvoting and downvoting shame is the idea of the culture war, right? It's the idea of people who are in the more I guess you could say extremist right wing. They make the argument that media is very left leaning and they're winning the culture war as it is, right? And I could understand at some, like, I guess from their perspective, how they could see this being true.
But
Things like, well, if they say like media as being left and liberal, like I'm not talking about like MSNBC. I'm talking about popular culture. I'm talking about like Star Wars: The Last Jedi, right? Like talking about how there's more diversity, but it seems like it's ham-fisted. It seems like it doesn't really propel the plot. It's like constantly this sort of like agenda in the background that says we want to have this message sent out. And I can see where they're a bit more like, see, this is where we're losing the culture war, where we want, and again, I'm not a right wing activist, but we believe that these things are not real and that our voices are being mocked and we're being disrespected and that we're being portrayed as yokels, right? And I can see that because that's how I often view them. But they're going to be the ones doing the upvote, downvoting. And they're going to be the ones that want to control what should be shamed and not, and what should be the unwritten rules. And that scares me because I don't really want regressives controlling that lever. I don't really want anyone, to be honest, doing that. But if it's going to be anybody, I don't want it to be
correct.
them.
2 points. One, since we live in a two-party system, which, as I've made clear ad nauseum times, is bad. Which party constantly brings up culture
The
wars?
one who's losing. The
No,
ones who's losing the
the
culture war.
one the one
In
side
their
that is
mind.
claiming to be the victim
Yep.
in the culture war. It's not. They're not losing. There is no culture war. There's just culture, and it's changing. They're making it a
true.
conflict.
Yeah,
And they are taking that conflict to make themselves a victim, so they have something to complain about because they can't actually benefit society with their policies.
Fucking hate about. It doesn't matter the party, really. It could be just anyone off the street. Fuck this fucking victimhood. Like, woe is me. Look how hard I have it.
But that argument can be made for Black Lives Matter. Except for Black Lives Matter has
that
a shitload of statistics.
Though. That's
of
fucking
like,
legit.
No,
that's
African Americans are being killed way more in police custody.
That's not playing victim at all.
Ignoring.
That's not. They are victims.
Yeah, they are.
They're not playing victim. Yeah. They just
But yet you will see a lot of federal Republicans being like, they're playing the victim card. They're playing the race card.
They're playing the race card.
No,
that's not the race card. That is a legit.
Why what they did was fine.
Yeah, here's a big problem with it too, is that I don't like if you label a group of people like victims, right? Imagine if one person thinks of themselves as the victim.
But they aren't.
And, well, no, it's not like that they aren't, but victim has a very strange term. It's like something that happens. What I don't want to do to somebody who's young and impressionable is tell them, you're just a victim of society, right? The reason that may be true, right?
But that shouldn't be how you behave.
No, it's
It shouldn't be how it's
your whole
stated.
world.
Like that
Yeah.
sense of like there is institutional racism, but
Or you shouldn't have this sense of entitlement because of your victimhood. Or
No,
sorry, what are you trying to get at, Phil?
to me, it's a very strange kind of like, I'm going to tell you that since you're a young kid, when you're very impressionable, that you are the victim, right? And that may also be the case. That may be very true. But it's a very strange type of like identity to have. And what does that mean to say something that I am a victim? It means that something happened to you. Okay, fair enough. But the reason why I kind of not cringe, but just kind of feel very uneasy with that word is because if they start to identify themselves as the victim as a young kid, and I'm talking about like it doesn't matter if you're from like a immigrant family and your parents are saying, "Oh, you're just a victim of our society," or if you're from a rural area that happens to be Caucasian, so, "Oh, you're just a victim of the liberal left." If you tell a kid this and they identify as being a victim, what does that really do to their psyche? And one of my fears is that, oh, um, you're powerless. Something is happening to you and you're a victim, versus like the concept of, oh, let's rally and let's lead a charge, let's counterattack, right? But that doesn't make sense in the narrative of victimhood, right? Like when you think about the word victim, at least when I hear it, I think of something that is passive but also aggressive to me. Like an attack is happening to me and I'm passive about it. I don't want to be, but I'm powerless to do something, right? I'm a victim of the situation. And the words in my brain seem like red
Well, that's the
flags.
problem, is when you're an actual victim versus when you're playing the victim.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is when you're told by people who are in authority, like your parents or your pastor, that you are being oppressed, you're a victim, you need to rise up and defend yourself because you're being bullied. You get told these things when it's probably maybe not true. And that's what inspires people to do stupid shit.
So there's two things the kid can be like, okay, I'm gonna rise up and I'm gonna meet the challenge and I'm gonna overcome it and I'm gonna overcompensate and I might not actually be the victim and now I'm the victimizer.
Yeah, now you're the aggressor.
I am the aggressor, and then that's kind of I would say that's a very, I mean, I could see that happen.
It does
People,
happen,
right?
actually. A
Atlanta.
lot.
The
Yeah. Or pretty much any, well, yeah.
the other side of it is like I'm a victim. Woe is me.
Pity me, pity me.
An island. Pity me. I am helpless.
Give me
I have
money.
no
Give me
power.
money. Take care of me. I deserve this.
One of the things that set me off is like, um, there's a book by Viktor Frankl who talks about this where he wants to say it's not really a
Is this man's search for meaning?
yeah, he's saying something like there has to be some agency
Mhm.
involved, right? Like you could be in a very hopeless situation, but the meaning involved in it, that's the trick, right? So if you have a mission, then you can overcome the struggle. And he quotes like one of the famous philosophers who never had a job. So I don't really know if you take it at face value, where a man can survive any how if he has a why.
Yeah, we're pretty resilient.
But I'm like, oh yeah, but did you actually have a job when you said that, Frederick Nietzsche, you asshole? Anyway, so my thought of this is that like if we have a shame-based system and you're the victim of this shame-based system, like I don't know if that's the best way to incentivize behavior, right? Like this is kind of where it gets very dangerous in my head. You want to have a voting system to democratically elect what we consider to be
But
shameful
it's
things.
non-binding because shame itself cannot be enforced by the state unless it becomes a law.
The stupid shit you're doing that you would be shamed for is not illegal. It's
You
just,
can
it's fucking stupid.
back to the point. You can swing at a meat pitch when your team is up by a dozen runs in a Major League Baseball game, and all of that happens. It's not going to be stopped. You didn't break any rules. You aren't going to be punished for it, but you are going to be shamed because it's the spirit of what that community is. And we don't have a national community of which shame is an effective tool as it should be, because we all live in this community. We are all Americans. Anyone who says red states and blue states, regardless whether they're praising red or praising blue or admonishing red or admonishing blue, have failed to be a member of this society, because they have made it so fractured that you are picking sides in which we should be the same. We don't have that sense of shame. We don't have a national sense of shame that we can point at someone and be like, you're saying that, like, the fact that coronavirus was affecting blue states meant that we shouldn't have a national medical rollout because your perceived enemies are suffering more. Like, we don't have a shame that can quantify that, because we can't point that out, even though that is exactly what Trump did in the first few months of the pandemic, because it was affecting California and New York and Washington
something correlation, not causation.
True, but
okay.
it's...
I mean, there was like witness statements that this was Jared Kushner's plan.
There's a lot. That's getting into
the population.
That's getting into tinfoil hat territory. But still, we don't have what is it to be a shameful American? What is that? We don't have that.
Walk down the street. I'm sure you could find at least 10.
No, you'll find all of them. Because all of them have different... We don't have a national consensus of what a bad American is.
We all hate Karens.
Except for fucking Karens, and those Karens will go to bat up by 27,000 and still hit a home run. Like, you'll have your weird militants, but we don't have a national consensus
most of
what
the
a bad
laws
American
that are...
And,
that
but it's the unwritten
break
laws.
A law is generally consensus.
The unwritten laws that I'm pointing at.
You mean the unwritten? Okay.
Yes.
Because it's, like, super shameful to, like, do a lot of those
murdering,
crimes,
super
like,
shameful. Abusing a kid, super shameful. Molesting a kid, as long as you're not a Republican, also, super shameful.
Yeah, and illegal. So you're thinking, you think there should be, like, a consensus for mild minor shame?
Yes, any person-to-person shame. Anything that gives someone else to be like, the right, like, somebody yelling at a cashier, and you in line being like, hey, dude, shut up. Your complaint is not valid in this situation. They are doing their job. I don't care that you think your can of peas
Micah,
should be 20 cents cheaper.
This is a lot like the what was it, the Chinese social rating system that they have?
No, because that can affect them individually. This is...
Yeah, but
This is bolstering societal correction that is non-detrimental to the person. It is not going on a permanent record. This is just, if somebody does something stupid, and it's if yelling at the cashier is on the board, then you can yell at that person.
Okay, you're yelling at someone for yelling at another person. That's just escalating.
I shared a video.
So this isn't a Reddit upvote thing then?
No, because you're backing
off of that
point of contention can be downvoted, and it will not be on the top 10 of the list. It cannot be the things you can publicly shame people for. It can always be fluctuating.
But it's still a tally. There's still a tally.
Was that a thing?
I don't know. This sounds like
it's not a tally. If someone is told off because of this,
are you going to tell off someone who's like 10 times bigger than you? No.
If I have a bit of societal backup that I can look at a crowd, yeah. Because
but
one jack dude can't take
those
on
50 other people are going to stand up.
There's
a
chart.
You're getting pummeled.
That chart can give me some authority.
The chart's going to do nothing.
And if I'm punched in the face, then I'm punched in the face. I'll be punched in the face because of my morals. Standing up for that one jack dude, not yelling at a cashier. I still have the moral high ground.
I would choose... doesn't matter. I would still choose to
Sorry, I've been a Minnesota sports fan for way too long. Moral victories are way more important to me than losses.
I prefer to avoid physical
I understand
harm.
that reference, and I agree.
You know.
Also, I have the base understanding that in social situations, violence is not most people's first reaction. And shame should have some impact.
It should. Doesn't mean it will.
But I will bet on should as opposed to will every time.
I don't see this. Like, you might as well just make it a fucking law.
No, because a law has actual consequences. This is meant to be
then there's no fucking
this is societal correction.
Then what's the... No, because then what's the point? There's no fucking
Consensus
consequences.
is the point.
No, but
But
if there's no consequences, who
Then
gives a
why
shit?
was Fernando Tatis shamed for hitting a home run, but the other guy was not? There's supposed to be a consensus of unwritten laws.
No idea.
If they aren't written
No
down,
idea.
they don't have that consensus.
Okay, so I know that we're recording for a long time, but I would like to add one thing is that I'm going to quote the Freakonomics book. There was a case where people weren't picking their kids up at a daycare. And so, at least not on time, which is very infuriating for the daycare. So what would they do? They had an option to maybe not fine them, but say, if you don't pick your kid up within the next hour, then we're going to charge you like $100 or something. And so we're going to see what happens. And it turns out that now more people weren't picking up their
Because they
kids
were
at daycare
testing it.
because they felt like the shame of being the only parent not picking up their daycare was more monetary, like they're willing to pay
To
money
not feel bad
to
about it.
avoid that shame, right? Because now it's just a fine. Well, now it's fine because it's just a fine. So here you go, here's your money. But the thing was, it was the shame that was preventing them from getting the kids, and they were okay with paying the fine.
I am so much more upset paying extra than any shame that is befuddling.
No, that's correct. So there is a price of shame
Ooh.
because now it's a business transaction. Like I'm not shamed that you guys have to take care of my kid longer and you're not charging me more. I feel very bad about it. But now it's like, oh well, this is just another service
I
fee.
had a
I'm willing
phone
to pay
call
that
from
right
my
now.
insurance agent because I misread my, insurance re-up, and I sent it out 2 days late, and it still hadn't paid. And that phone call, I looked at the number, and I never answer just numbers because,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't
who the fuck
either.
does? Exactly.
What am I,
Spam.
And I'm
crazy?
like,
Yeah, no.
and
Leave
I
a
was like,
fucking
wait a
message.
minute, that one seems familiar. And I answered it. I was like, oh, yeah, no, I sent it out. And I held my tongue so much to just not apologize. Of just like, I'm so sorry. I misread it, and I wanted to send it out. And I was like, yeah, no, if it hasn't cleared, by all means, and I will pay all fees, but it was supposed to go out. And it was just like that error and that shame of being called was like, as soon as I get that next one, it is out the next day. But then I say that with all my electric bills, and I pay all those late anyway. So,
Oh,
but like every
who cares
6 month
about
bill is
electric
way
bills?
more relevant than like what seems to be an every 2 week bill.
I think shame is irrational. Same with honor, right?
I think they do. And I do think they are useful tools. Just like religion.
Well, I mean, no, that's different because I don't want this board to be like a badge that someone has, good or bad. I don't want someone to have they pay their electric bill late every month, which I would have a whole fucking blazer full of those pins.
Do you want a moral
No,
police?
I
Then?
want people to have some confidence to call out bullshit that they record on their phone and post on Twitter and being like, this is some bullshit, right? When all they did in that situation was fucking record it. I want people to act when they see things that they find wrong societally, as what society agrees on is wrong. That's what I want. I want greater interaction in our society and in our culture to self-police what we find as bad. If that happened, I don't know if Donald Trump would have won in 2016 if this was implemented for a generation. Or the reactions of national Republicans in looking at January 6th and being like, no, they were basically just tourists if you ignore all of the violence they did. But then that becomes
I
like...
think this... I hate to say this, but I think the shameful acts would also vary based
I
on
agree,
location.
and it should be a regional thing, because it also is based on culture, and then there's a lot of history you dig into. Like, south side of Chicago will have a very different set of unwritten laws than the north side of Chicago. Like, all of that can span...
Laws now?
Huh? No.
Laws now? You just said
unwritten
laws.
rules, whatever. Unwritten law was a band I listened to.
I know, I'm just making... just semantics.
But also, same thing. It's an unwritten law of baseball that you don't hit a home run when you're up by 10. Again, the crux of this whole point was that, where one was shamed,
I honestly
one was
think
not.
this is gonna be gasoline on fire, though. Like, especially if it's regional, they're just gonna be
potentially, but is that not how town laws work? Are they not echo chambers?
I think the people who are brave enough or give no shits to call other people out on their bullshit are are necessary in society, but I don't think you should have that burden put on
All right.
just
Final
everybody.
caveat of this is Arkansas recently, today, unbanned yoga instruction in their schools. It was banned for 30 years for arbitrary reasons.
Stupid reason.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Would only the people in Alabama hear about that ban if that ban was known nationwide? Sure, it's a regional, I mean, that was a literal law, but we are finding out through a lot more information exchange of the shitty laws that are on books that people are being prosecuted for that we find absurd. Or like no-knock
So
warrants.
those shouldn't
and
be
how...
actual laws, they should be
Oh, God
unwritten
damn it.
laws.
The point I'm fucking making is there are absurd things that are acceptable in very small portions that need to be disseminated and known by most to be shamed and hopefully redacted. Because it is a detriment to all of society if you have small pockets.
I get what you're
So,
I
it
get what
can
you're
be regional.
laying down.
Like how northern Minnesota and southern Iowa are different. But if those unwritten laws are put on a board because everyone who brings it up and it gets upvoted, downvoted, then everyone can see those and everyone can look at those and be like, God, that's fucked up. Like, it's fucked up that having wire cutters in your back pocket is a hangable offense in Texas, that is still on the books.
I'm not talking about like laws that are actually absurd. I'm talking about like the unwritten rules that are agreed upon in your little pocket of the world, and you have other people from like say we'll just do Minnesota.
They don't get to upvote and downvote, but they can talk about it.
From people, no, I know, but they can talk about it and they can try to shame Minnesota for their stupid, in their opinion, unwritten rules. But Minnesota can just be like, well, fuck you.
Or
you
other people can be like, wait, hold on.
Mind your business.
That's kind of bad, and we should work on that.
That would just...
And we should improve that.
No,
or
I
other people
like
can be more militant, and then that militant stigma can happen. Like
I don't think that's a good idea at all.
How else are we going
to
try and have this country get on the same page?
I like the idea of the visibility and the transparency of what people think is shameful or not. Because I bet if you did this nationally, Japan is going to have a very different list than Seattle would, right? Like, or Tokyo would have a very different list than maybe another.
Yeah, and
that's a mega city, so I don't know. Parts of Tokyo would have a different list than Okinawa, for example. So, like, I would say, that would just be fascinating as well. Because no one knows what the hell people find shameful.
You both have seen like
honorable,
most popular fast food chain by state, and you're like, what? Why?
What?
Yeah, Wyoming, Taco Bell.
First of all, no, it's
right, but you're still like, there's got to be something better, right? And then that can become a joke.
Yeah.
It's like
it's
it starts a conversation. It's the talking about salaries and religion and politics, and as soon as sides are expressed and arguments are made, then change can happen. And as long as we have it instilled that we ignore these things and that personal opinion is the most sacred of things,
I do think people do need to be challenged.
If people can still live in their echo chambers.
I don't know that I would agree with the unwritten rule being written down thing, but I do think people do need to be challenged socially.
Yeah, and if one of the most unwritten rules is you don't challenge someone on their beliefs, then that rule can be challenged. Oh God, discomfort amongst people because they have to think.
No, some of these unwritten rules could be really vague, or they would be used against people.
But it's also
not the intent.
Only shame. That's it. There's no legal detriment. There's no financial detriment. There's no it's not doxing.
No,
it's not
no
doxing.
direct.
You're not able to look at someone's license if they're yelling at a cashier because they're having a bad day, and that is not the right place you should vent that.
Yeah, but if they're recorded and they're
but that's happening now anyway. But now it's not there's no standard of when that needs to happen because people are taking out their phones and recording when it's shitty. It's supposed to fucking burn them.
Anyway, we could devolve into the. I'm just gonna disagree.
I'm just gonna say that I agree with you, Micah. We need to have a website called Name Your Shame, and then people can just say, "I'm from Duluth, And the shame that I feel like is the number one shame.
Wait,
Like,
you're
just
asking
what do you
people
think the
to
number one
name
shame
their
is?
most shameful
Which is
moment?
littering.
Oh,
What
okay.
they think is the most shameful thing in their area. And then you could kind of see the bubbles. That's not illegal, but it's, yeah, or maybe minor illegal, not like murder, but like when people, throw their cigarette butts into the grass or something. It's like, oh, I think that's their most shameful thing here. And it would be really nice to see it. Like, I think that actually would be super cool to see like what they think is
We
shameful
should
for
start a
them in their
subreddit, you
culture.
guys.
No, I think it needs to be a website, and you can
Name
put
your shame.
in your zip
Yeah,
code,
and your social
and then
security
that's it.
number, your
No, we're
credit
not
card,
Parlor.
your
Phil, we're
3-digit
not
on the
Parlor.
credit card,
We're gonna get their IP, and that's enough.
Parlor. Yeah.
All right.
Your IP,
And
your social security
mother's
number,
maiden
and your
name and first
FBI
pet.
agent, and you just get all three of those. And yeah, so that would be nice to see. I would like to know, what do other people find shameful? And then you can have
Yeah,
another crappy website about what
shameyourname.com
people
and
think is honorable, but really hard to find a name. Shame your name.
Yeah, it's just too bad that a lot of
yeah,
people are
and
going to
that's
disagree on what's
fine.
shameful.
Then at least we're
Yeah.
having the discussion. That's the point.
Oh, name your fame. So what do you think that your city is most like prestigious or proud about, right?
It's a
Because that's kind of what
it's
they
a
think is
sister
honorable.
site.
It's a sister site where it's like,
All
well,
right,
Duluth
so
is very proud of
Yeah.
their wonderful
through
Pride and
downtown
Prejudice.
area. Yep. Pride and
so through my
Duluth!
ramblings, we came
This
up
is a
with three
great
good
idea.
ideas for my bad
Okay.
topic. Okay.
Sometimes we just need a good business model to start a new. Why aren't we
Too honest.
millionaires yet?
No,
Oh,
we're
because we're
too
lazy.
honest.
We're lazy and we're that.
But,
Laziness
like,
is my shame.
That is probably
one of the myths that has been
Mhm.
broken down with me growing up as, just a cis white American dude is like America has this grand idea of itself, and we always strive for it. Not to pull you up by your bootstraps, but like the ingenuity that you can do whatever
that we're
you
just better.
can think of and you can do.
If you put your mind to it,
Yeah,
you have
and
the ambition.
that is
and the
nothing but
will,
bullshit.
You can.
But yet no one fucking talks about the American dream is utter bullshit. We don't have a national consensus of our ideals. We don't. And that is
Why do we need a consensus?
depressing.
Why
It's
do we
not a
need to be
hive mind. It's we need to have a common understanding, and we don't have that. Yeah. We're working
It's
on
a
it,
mission
but that's not good
statement,
enough.
right?
We're working on it.
Wait, is that the mission
Yeah, it
statement?
is currently.
Yeah, it's
We're working on it.
I want America to like be the ideal
Well, really,
that I grew up thinking America was, and it's fucking not. And it's like nobody's working towards it,
Yeah, well, that's
whatever
like
it may be.
that's like asking
Correct.
someone. No, you're asking someone who's not interested for something they can't give. Sorry, America, but America's just not interested.
We're a late stage empire, and we're faltering, and I don't want us to fall.
We're old, and
That's all. Because very soon we can be a European Union, individual countries that kind of have a consensus, and then a Brexit happens, and then Hispanics. No, that's not going to work. I'm trying to think of like if Germany ever leaves the EU is going to collapse because Germany is just like their economic powerhouse.
Yeah, that's my concern too, though. It's like for the United States, are we ever going to get to the point where we're so fractured? I mean, the thing is that I don't really know what we as an American stand
we don't
for.
have an ideal.
What exactly? If we had an ideal, like, it's
of many one, but we're now of many.
Of many one.
No, we're of many
two.
It's not two anymore. It was two for a bit, and that was too much of a fracture.
Now we're of many collapsing, of many fractured.
I think that the best episode was like one of the better episodes of whatever PBS was showing was Peter Sagal's USA, where he would kind of go around in his motorcycle and try to ask people what they think US was about. And
freedom.
Yeah,
he did.
Well, he had some really crazy answers, and he went to like kind of a group of hardy like retired Marines. And they're like, freedom to just do what you want, and if you get into a fist fight, then you just get into a fist fight, like it's just, you have this kind of sense of liberty that there's nobody to tell, like you can make these decisions on your own and you have to face the
Yeah.
consequences.
Quick
And I was like,
quick
good
follow-up. What
God,
is
like I do not
assault?
want that freedom because I would die. Like,
Yeah.
right, like I'm like, this is a type of
Mhm.
cowboy lifestyle that I am not interested in entertaining. But this is what like some of his answers were. And some of the things that I would like to have, like I don't know, the basic universal health care. Other people are like, "Oh, you're a
Those
socialist, communist." Then,
those
oh,
are
it's like,
No, I just
no,
want
I
to
what?
help the most people, including
one
myself,
is a
for the
governmental
least
plan, one is an
cost.
economic plan, so
Right. It's
those
like
aren't the same thing.
so they think that because I want a more, state-oriented solution for healthcare that I'm almost anti-American, right? Because it's supposed to be a capitalist
Yeah.
society. This is what America is founded. Like, so no one has a freaking clue about like that's like trying to describe, I don't know, like what something tastes like.
We're a
We don't
hodgepodge
have
of
to be a hodgepodge. We can
yeah,
have a
we're like
conversation.
but that's what we were
No, we were
built
built on
on.
a
That's what
fucking
we've
religious
been
ethno-state.
I mean, that's true, but like we're still
Yeah, we were
the
built on a lot of bad things.
yeah, but the thing you were told in fucking elementary school was like
Yeah,
America's
so
a
then we
melting
should.
pot, like
Yeah.
we're basically a fucking stew that's been set on the stove
Eventually,
for
if
too
you have a
fucking
bunch
long.
of butter, cheese, and
People just
pasta in
keep
a
adding
pot, it will
shit to
make
it.
something good. But it's not called a melting pot then. It's
Yeah, but
called,
if you
like,
leave it
the final concoction. We don't have an idea of the final concoction.
No, we're
But
a
even a
perpetual
stew
stew is what
combines.
we are. And we just keep adding yeah, I know, but we keep adding shit to it, but you have
You're
to
right,
keep
the melting pot
taking
analogy
stuff
is fucking
out
shit.
as
We need a better one.
or consuming. It is. It's a terrible
We're a
idea.
chocolate
It
It's
cheese
doesn't
not good
work.
at
fondue pot.
all.
I mean,
No.
no, we're a fucking perpetual
No,
stew.
that isn't what we have
That's
to
what
be.
it
Right.
isn't what we have to be,
What
but it's
steps
what
do
we
we
are
make to
at the
not have it
moment.
happen?
There's nothing definitive about it.
I want us to be invaded by aliens, so
Well, I
like
don't know how you
humanity
want
can be like, oh shit, we are just one. We are one species on a small
I
fucking
hate
blue
all of
dot.
your ideas.
Give me Columbus Day. Although,
I hate all of your ideas.
So next time on Isn't It Obvious, we'll discover what my mom says when she explains, Philip, you have no shame. And I'm gonna be like, I don't even know what that means. But thanks, Mom. Love you.
Blarg.
No last word for you.